Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Valeria and this is the Off-Road Ranch. As usual. This video I decided to dedicate to the most important aspect of the existence of civilization. This is money. In my previous videos, I told you about my ambitious plans. And, of course, money is needed to implement them. But before I talk about my finances, I would like to remind you what money is, what a significant role they play in our lives, and how differently they are distributed in the world. I would like to talk about it because people perceive money differently. Moreover, most even don't think how they appear, how they are managed, and how they manage us. And also, people often don't understand their connection with money and what is the value of their work in the economy. Money is a means that for thousands of years has served humanity as an equivalent for expressing the value of any subject. Originally, it was an exchange in such a way that both people felt it was fair. For example, 2 goats were exchanged for a cow, or a bull skin for clayware. Later, its equivalent appeared in different countries of the world. It could be tea, pepper, cattle, sugar, stones, depending on the territory and on the availability of this medium of exchange. Later, they were replaced by metal. Iron, tin, lead, bronze. And gradually, paper money appeared. In the 20th century, there were several monetary reforms. During the first reform, gold, pegged to paper money, became the guarantor of the value of money. After the Second World War, this standard collapsed, since there was less gold equivalent that money that states issued. But by this time, a number of currencies had already been distributed around the world. Therefore, another reform was carried out, after which a number of currencies became not tied to precious metals and became freely convertible. This same standard continues to this day. But the printing of money, their release into free circulation, their withdrawal from circulation require a lot of efforts and finances, and careful forecasting and control of population behavior. It is difficult to do if a person can save money in cash and keep it at home. In addition, exchange of cash may not be controlled in any way by those who own the global financial system and issuance of money. And this is simply unacceptable, because, as I say in the video about information security, there is an obvious tendency to control us as much as possible. And this is impossible without managing our finances, accounts, our spendings and purchases. And how convenient it would be to see how much a person receives a month, how much he spends on utilities, apartments and food, and how much he saves. How convenient it would be to prevent a person from earning more than the accepted standard in his country, and how convenient it would be to restrict his possession by forcibly withdrawing these funds under certain conditions. How convenient it would be to track what a person buys, and not allow to buy him something if his social rating doesn't allow or for other reasons. And how convenient it would be to withdraw billions from circulation in an instant, or vice versa, release billions into circulation, because this can change the state of market by 180 degrees, and of course it will affect us. But often we don't understand it and cannot track all the chain of reactions. Therefore, it was decided, with the help of digitalization, to introduce digital money, whose real value, in my opinion, lies in the cost of servers, and data centers where this currency is stored, and in the cost of their maintenance, but not in the cost of money by itself or the goods that can be bought for this money. Having full control over all financial flows and gradually withdrawing paper money from circulation, it is possible to do what I said above. That is, track all transactions, analyze the consumer basket, regulate the amount and availability of funds in accounts, block accounts for certain reasons, despite the fact that these are earned personal funds of a person, deprive these funds, depreciate them, and so on. But also, digitalization gives a possibility to set prices for goods and services independently, based on how accessible they should be for ordinary people in the opinion of influential people. It means that prices are not based on the real value of goods, which consist of the cost of natural resources, the cost of their extraction, its production, logistics, modernization, physical and mental labor of a person. The price shall consist of those things which a person really spends time and efforts on, which should be rewarded. And only a person, each of us, brings value to everything. Because if you imagine a world without a human, then there is no price and value of anything there, since a natural animal balance reigns there. And each of us contributes his own drop into the ocean in the emergence of value for goods and services. Unless, of course, you understand why and where you work and what value you bring to this world, and you are not an information businessman or a corrupt official, or I can name other activities, but it would be incorrect. For each of us, money has its own meaning. For some, these are just pieces of papers that can be thrown into the wind. Papers that have no value because there is so much money that you can live without counting. Buy yachts, islands, power, weapons, people in literal and figurative sense. And as a rule, this money is not earned by real work, and often is not earned at all, but appears as a result of cunning schemes, lack of morality, and walking over people's heads. As a rule, such a person is not ready to donate even 1% of his wealth and treat ordinary people like cattle. After all, his lunch can cost more than someone's earnings in a lifetime. Such people, as a rule, know much more than most people do. The more money a person has, the more strength and power he has. The greater scope of what is happening in the world he can cover and can influence it. We know some of these people, but most prefer to remain in shadows. Moreover, more often people prefer not to be interested in who can play which role in the world. And for some, money is a means of survival from month to month, when a person cannot buy food and saves every penny. When a person doesn't have internet, TV, or electricity at all, and there is no heat, water, hygiene, normal food or clothing. Such a person dies from disease. His children die from hunger. Such people may be not educated and unable to read and write. In such countries, there is no normal medicine, no new technologies, education, jobs, not to mention decent wages and qualifications, and not to mention beautiful clothes, apartments, or traveling. But this situation applies not only to entire countries. This situation is happening every day all over the world. Don't you want to see this side of the world? This situation is happening around us, ordinary people, who are in between the ultra-rich and the extremely poor people. On the one hand, we are united by common things, warm apartments, comfortable clothes, good food, average work and weekends, the availability of infrastructure, sewage, heating, electricity, the internet. Nevertheless, we are in very different social strata, since someone can afford to live in a new country every week and change a car every year, and someone has never left their town and will buy the only car in his lifetime on credit. However, we are those people who can choose between good and evil, those people who can see what is happening if we are interested in, know the history of events, analyze and understand somehow what is happening, and then decide whether we like it, whether it is fair, and whether we want to do something about it. But many people just don't want to open their eyes and see it. They don't want to go to the places where it happens. They don't want to watch such news and don't want to hear and see the truth. Accept it as it is and do something about it. Because to open your eyes and believe in it means to stop being silent and take responsibility for the fact that you can influence it. But you have to sacrifice your comfort, finances, social circle, and perhaps safety. So, money is not just numbers on cards or electronic accounts, not papers and bonds, not cryptocurrency, and not even precious metals, jewelry, paintings, movable and immovable assets. Money should reflect the ability of a person to benefit society, because people pay those who can give them something that they need, because our world is always an exchange. And I have to be totally involved in this interchange, giving my money for the development of my project and earning money for the implementation of my project. And as I said before, I don't have a sponsor or a daddy, I don't have a rich husband or boyfriend, and trading my freedom and choice to be something with the money is complete shit. Also, I don't have relatives who would appreciate my values, my outlook on things, my experience, and the real situation in the world or in my life. Therefore, I don't have a family who would like to support me in my endeavors and could help financially. And even if they suddenly offered it, I would refuse, because I don't trust them for a long time and people don't change. I understand that $1 million is a small amount of money, but if you stole it, earned it illegally, or received through someone else's hands, and then built a house just to amuse your ego and brag to relatives, then such a person will never in his life understand what real life is. Moreover, such a person will never share even 1 cent with anyone. And I was personally told about it when I asked for help. Therefore, I don't have anyone to ask for money, and I don't want to use people. If I started working for an employer now, I would have several hundreds of dollars a month left, since most of it would go to apartments, utilities, and food. Though it would take me decades to accumulate funds just to start the project. Moreover, after 10 hours of work, I would have no time for the project, and I would have no time to shoot it and release for you on YouTube. And in principle, I would have no time to do what I love. I think that few people would disagree with me that they have only a few hours a week for themselves. And if you have kids or parents to look after, then you don't have this time either. By this, I don't mean that you shouldn't have children or take care of your parents. I'm talking about the fact that the problem of our modern world is that we have time just to work and to sleep, and we have money just for the minimum needs until the next paycheck. So if you used to think that the world works somehow differently, then no. welcome to hardcore. And welcome to my personal hardcore, where I will survive as best I can. In other words, welcome to the reality show The Off-Road Ranch, which began from my zero introductory video. So, how much money do I need and where will I get it? I cannot earn all money of the world, but fortunately now I have some capital and I can predict what I will do and start the physical implementation of the project. Initially, I applied to banks with the request for a loan, but they didn't approve the amount I asked for, although it wouldn't have been enough anyway. Banks need reliable loan guarantees, and they are not satisfied that I just started working for myself or for someone else in someone else's garage, despite the fact that if I studied to be a mechanic and then work in a garage, I could earn the amount needed to pay off the loan. Banks need someone more reliable. Therefore, I applied to several of my acquaintances who could act as a guarantor of a loan repayment. And I found such a person. He always supported me in all my endeavors and always gave advice and recommendations based on his incredible experience while I was working at his company. He agreed to become a guarantor, so the bank gave me a loan of $27,500. But he understood that these funds were not enough, and he was very impressed by my project, especially considering that he believes that the world needs more active people. So, besides the fact that he became a guarantor, he helped me personally. My idea made him happy, but since he is a very busy person and doesn't have time to get involved and devote time to this, he loaned me $85,000 to start a project with a return on parole and no interest on the use of the money. I will try to earn and return this money as soon as possible, because money is not taken out of thin air, and the person needs this money. Besides, he gave me $5,000 for my great motivation and self-confidence. Many people, even if they lend their money, would do it with difficulties and with interest. For some reason, they regard their help as credit banking services and think that they risk. They believe that they are deprived of money and this money is frozen by other people, despite the fact that they didn't even plan to use it. So the person must return some interest to them, like for freezing their funds and paying their risk, despite the fact that this money will go to the development of another person. Maybe you know why own short-term material gain is more important than free, unselfishly helping another person to become better. And how can this be changed? I will be happy to hear your thoughts in the comments. If a person has already realized himself in his life, has recognition and earnings, and no longer wants to change anything in this life, then why not help another person to reach some heights and make a world a better place? If you understand what kind of person you communicate with and what his principles and motives are, then perhaps you should trust him, and money will return to you, the world will become better, and you will not become competitors, because together you can become stronger. Some time ago, I asked my close relative to lend me the amount that he could afford to spend over the weekend. I did it because he repeatedly promised me any help, and I totally trusted him. But not only he asked for a percentage, as I said before, but also asked for a detailed business plan, because he is a super businessman and he had to take everything under his illusionary control in order to interfere with work every day and jeopardize the implementation of the project, because he didn't understand anything in the field I worked in. And then, instead of directly refusing, so that I wouldn't waste time and could find other resources, he began to come up with excuses. The last straw was the question: what if you hide from me in another country? It was ridiculous, because he knew me from my first days of life. I was full, and I asked, "And what if I die at all tomorrow?" He said, "Well, yes, you are right." And I answered, "Well, that's how it should have started." And we didn't talk anymore. So this man I worked for loaned me $85,000 under the condition that I pay it back when I have a possibility. And he gave me $5,000 as a gift. Taking into account the loan from the bank, in total I got $117,500, which of course doesn't cancel my work in the garage, since I need much more amount. And my next expenses will be as follows. The biggest expense is the land, and I plan to spend on it no more than $95,000. I won't be able to take it on credit or in installments because I already have a loan and a large debt, and I cannot take any more risks. I will look through the real estate market and select a list of sites which are more or less suitable based on my requirements. And then I will go to see them live and to explore them in order to see the full picture. I will describe in detail the criteria for choosing a plot in one of the next videos. It will be useful for those who are going to buy their own land, because there are a lot of factors that can dramatically affect what you can realize there. If I spend from $80,000 to $95,000 on a land, then I have from $22,000 to $37,000 left. I plan to spend this money on a Jeep purchase, boxes rental, and personal expenses. I planned to buy a Jeep from $8,000 to $18,000 depending on condition. And I plan to buy it here, not at auction in another country. First, I don't know what condition it will actually arrive in. And I don't want to buy a Jeep that cannot drive and almost falls apart. And I cannot afford to pay for ordered by mechanics who will give evaluation of the exact condition of the car remotely. Secondly, my friend also ordered a Jeep for himself and waited a month for it to be delivered and another 3 months for customs clearance. And also, upon arrival to the country, I will need to pay a fee that can be higher than the cost of the car, which I cannot afford. Therefore, I will look for the Jeep here. And after that, I have from $14,000 to $29,000 left for 6 months to rent 2 boxes, one for training as a mechanic and the other for car repairs, and also money for apartments, utilities and food. Also, for the next 6 months, after buying a land and a Jeep, I will earn money for the next stages of implementation. These stages include buying tools, materials and spare parts, and repairing and upgrading a car. If you are going to use your off-road car for specific needs, then you might have to upgrade it. It might occur that there is no car immediately ready for what the owner needs it for, but we will talk about it later. Also, after buying a land and understanding its size, shape, topography and other factors, I will need to start designing what will be on it. And I also need to earn money for tools for ennobling the land, and most importantly, I need money for a mini house so that I can live and work there permanently as soon as possible, completely focusing on my project. I told about this decision in the video number 2 about detailed strategy. And since I already have some funds and can proceed to the next steps, I will try to make a video about the criteria for choosing a land and a video about the criteria of choosing a car in a month. As you can see, each stage requires careful planning, and I will constantly talk about my financial expenses in next videos. And if talk about total approach to finances, then you shall remember that money you earn is your time and your work, and it is up to you to decide whether to treat your resources wisely or to spend them thoughtlessly. I kindly ask you to share your friends with my channel, as my task is, among others, your motivation and interest in an active life. I look forward for your active support in the ways available to you. Subscribe to me, put your likes, write comments. It was Valeria, the Off-Road Ranch. Wish you all the best and see you soon.